At the city morgue, Amy wheels a newly delivered body to the scale room. Her coworker, Seth, notices the transparent mask over the corpse's face and deduces that the person was a burn victim. He removes the mask and sets it aside, then tells Amy she can head out early since her birthday is in a few hours. Amy insists on staying for the last 10 minutes of her shift, as she's only meeting friends for drinks afterward. Seth calls her over to another gurney and surprises her with a coffin-shaped birthday cake, much to her delight. She thanks him with a hug and invites him to join her and her friends for drinks, expressing that she'd like him to meet them. However, Seth politely declines. In the office, their wheelchair-bound boss, Holden, greets Amy with a happy birthday and informs her that her shift has just ended. Amy asks for her phone, which is kept in a safe to prevent employees from potentially taking pictures of the bodies and posting them online. Suddenly, they see a news report on TV about a mass murder at the derelict Blackwell Hotel. Holden then answers a call from the authorities, informing him that 9 bodies from the crime scene are on their way to the morgue. Instead of leaving, Amy decides to stay and help out. She steps out of the room to call her friends and let them know about the change of plans. In the office, Holden teases Seth about being too scared to ask Amy out on a date. Meanwhile, Amy leaves her friend Tamara a voicemail explaining that she can't meet them tonight. After the call, she returns to the office and hands her phone back to Holden. In an ambulance, paramedics are defibrillating a man. A woman asks her colleague if they should continue trying to save him. Moments later, they pronounce him dead and head to the morgue. Eventually, Amy and Seth wait for the last delivery. Jacob Goodnight, the man whom the paramedics failed to resuscitate, and who the authorities believe committed the brutal murders at the Blackwell Hotel. As they wheel the body to the elevator, Seth drops something on the floor just as the doors close, leaving Amy alone in the carriage. When the doors open, Amy wonders where her coworker is, as he said he would take the stairs. Suddenly, Seth startles her from behind. In the scale room, they measure the body and discover that Jacob is 7 feet tall. Moments later, Amy hears a gurgling noise from the corpse's mouth. Leaning in, she is disgusted when the body expels blood onto her face. Seth tells Amy to head back to the office, assuring her that he'll finish up. As she walks down the hallway, Amy hears someone calling her name from a room filled with sheet-covered bodies. Suddenly, 4 bodies sit up from their tables, and she realizes it's her friends Carter, Tamara, Kayla, and her brother Will, there to throw her a surprise party. Holden joins the group and explains that he permitted them to have the celebration at the workplace. Amy tells her brother she wasn't expecting to see him, implying a strained sibling relationship. She guesses it was Tamara's idea because of her morbid fascination with death, joking that Tamara is jealous of her occupation. Then, Seth appears, and Amy introduces him to the group. Moments later, Will approaches Seth and says his sister deserves more than working the graveyard shift at the morgue. He adds that she deserves someone who can offer her more, implying his disapproval of Seth for Amy. Amy watches Seth leave the party in a hurry and realizes her brother must have insulted him. Meanwhile, Tamara sits on Holden's lap and asks for details about the Blackwell Hotel incident. When she learns that the killer's body was delivered to the morgue, she excitedly tells her boyfriend, Carter, that she wants to see it. The couple pretends they need to use the restroom as an excuse to leave the party and explore the building. Amy asks Will what he told Seth, and he says he's disappointed that she quit medical school only to end up with a poorly paying job at the morgue. Amy counters that she doesn't live her life for her brother's or their mother's approval and insists he should accept her decision because she loves her job. She storms off, and when Will chases after her, Kayla tells him to give his sister some space. Meanwhile, Tamara and Carter enter the room where Jacob's body is. Despite Carter's pleas, Tamara continues to mess around in the room. She explains that through her online research about Jacob and his upbringing, she learned that his mother Margaret, a fundamentalist religious fanatic, used to ceremoniously torture him and lock him in a cage when he was a child. When Tamara kisses Jacob's lips, Carter calls her out, and she teases him about being jealous. To appease her boyfriend, she goes to him to get what she wants. In the hallway, Kayla flirts with Will, but when she touches his hand, he emphasizes that he sees her like a sister. Nevertheless, Kayla kisses him passionately, and he reciprocates. Concurrently, Tamara and Carter are on the table next to Jacob's. Moments later, Tamara notices that the body has disappeared. Suddenly, the power goes out, so Tamara lights a match. Unbeknownst to them, Jacob is still alive and standing right behind them. The killer attacks them, but Tamara manages to find the door in the darkness and escape. Jacob turns the lights back on and finds his mother's body. He mournfully cries but remembers how he took her life. Moments later, Jacob removes the gauze covering his right eye. He then takes a burn victim's mask from an operating table and puts it on before opening a cabinet filled with an array of tools on the wall. In the hallway, Amy, Kayla, and Will hear Tamara's scream, and they decide to find her. Meanwhile, Jacob pursues Holden, and the boss falls from his wheelchair after the killer tosses a chained hook. Jacob ensnares Holden's foot with the hook and drags the screaming man towards him. The trio investigates the scale room, and Amy questions the whereabouts of Jacob's body. Will points out blood on the mortuary cabinet door, and to their horror, they discover Carter's lifeless body inside. Suddenly, the power goes out. In the scale room, Will suggests calling the police, but Amy reminds him that all their phones are locked inside the safe in Holden's office. Before heading out to search for Tamara, Will grabs a scalpel from the table. In the hallway, they come across Holden, who is taking his final breaths. Amy apologizes, feeling helpless to save him. Meanwhile, Seth investigates the fuse box and realizes it has been deliberately destroyed. Simultaneously, the trio encounters the distraught Tamara, who informs them that Jacob Goodnight is still alive. Elsewhere, Seth accidentally drops his keys on the floor and looks up to see the masked man wielding a curved machete. Meanwhile, the others arrive at a locked door that Amy indicates requires a security key to open, suggesting they are trapped. Suddenly, Seth appears on the other side and uses his key to reunite with the group. Moments later, Jacob's arm smashes through the glass and grabs Seth, but they all manage to escape just as the killer effortlessly kicks the door down. The group soon splits up. Seth and Tamara stick together, the siblings find refuge in a room, and Kayla ends up alone. Kayla locks herself in a bathroom, unaware that Jacob is inside. The killer strangles her and throws her to the floor. When he sees his reflection in the mirror, memories of his mother insisting he is the hand of God flood back, reminding him of the murders at the Blackwell Hotel. He struggles against Margaret's deeply ingrained religious teachings that urge him to kill, much to Kayla's relief. However, Jacob questions why someone like Kayla, a sinner in his eyes, deserves God's mercy, and he watches as she takes her final breaths. Meanwhile, Seth advises Tamara to escape through the east stairwell while he stays behind to find Amy. Unfortunately, they discover Jacob has chained a table to the exit, preventing their exit. They enter a room, and Seth instructs Tamara to crouch behind a shelf while he hides under an operating table. Suddenly, the killer arrives, and the siblings witness his presence through the glass partition. Amy becomes aware that their friends are in danger in the adjacent room and insists they take action. She bangs on the glass to get Jacob's attention, but when Tamara attempts to flee, the killer swiftly strikes her neck with his machete, ending her life. Will breaks the partition using an office chair, allowing Seth to swiftly enter the other room. Attempting to escape, Jacob crashes through the wall and seizes Will by the neck. Amy refuses to abandon her brother, but Will urges them to leave him behind. Amy and Seth attempt to find another way out, only to discover Kayla's lifeless body. They hear Will's screams, prompting Amy to break the emergency glass and grab the hammer inside. They descend the stairs to a lower level and find Will strapped to an operating table. As they try to free him, Will urges them to save themselves. Suddenly, Jacob, who is hiding under the table, flips it over. Amy tries to confront Jacob, but when Seth intervenes to help her, Jacob injures Seth's shoulder with the electric knife. They seek refuge in a fenced area, but Jacob easily breaks through the chained gate. The pair find a moment to rest in a deserted corner, where Amy becomes distraught thinking about the deaths of all her friends, including her brother. Seth consoles her, promising never to leave her behind and assuring her they will survive. They come upon a locked gate, and Amy manages to find the right key just in time before Jacob catches up to them. In the embalming room, Amy insists on cauterizing Seth's wound to prevent him from bleeding out. Moments later, Amy attempts to open a window, but it only opens halfway. Seth realizes he can't fit through and insists that she take his car to get help, despite her objections. Reluctantly, Amy takes the keys and they share a kiss before she squeezes through the narrow opening and ends up outside. However, sensing Jacob approaching, Amy quickly slides back inside through the window just as Jacob breaks the glass. Amy and Seth press against a wall to avoid being seen by Jacob. Suddenly, Amy recalls another exit they haven't yet tried. They make their way to a door on the opposite side of the building, hoping it's far enough away from Jacob. Unfortunately, Jacob's arm bursts through the door, stabbing Amy in the stomach with his machete. He opens the door wider through the hole, prompting Seth to flee for his life. In the office, Seth grabs a chair and strikes Jacob with it, causing him to drop the machete. However, as Seth reaches for the machete, Jacob steps on his hand, causing him to recoil in pain. Jacob then lifts Seth and hurls him against the wall. Seth manages to hobble back to the embalming room and tries to escape through the broken window, but Jacob grabs his leg and pulls him back inside. Jacob drags Seth across the floor by his leg, causing a shelf of jars to tumble down on top of him. After lifting Seth to his feet, Jacob throws him to the other side of the room, near the embalming machine. With Jacob looming over him, Seth plunges a needle into the killer's torso and activates the pump. Immediately, Jacob convulses as blood and blue embalming fluid pour from his wounds, and he collapses to the floor. Later, a mournful Seth returns to Amy's lifeless body, gently closes her eyes, and kisses her one last time. He then limps out of the building and into his vehicle. Finally, Seth stops at the gate and realizes he needs to open it manually. Exiting the car, he removes the latch and pushes the barrier aside. To his horror, he notices the backseat door of his vehicle wide open. As he steps back, Jacob suddenly emerges behind him, grabbing Seth's head and forcefully pushing his fingers into the screaming Seth's eye. See you in our next Film Flash. Thank you for watching.